In the year 1347, something arrived in Europe that would change human history forever. It did not come with an army. There were no warning banners on the horizon. No king declared war. No city prepared its defenses. Instead, it arrived quietly, hidden aboard merchant ships crossing vast trade routes that connected distant continents. At first, few noticed anything unusual. A sailor falls ill. A dock worker develops a fever. A family suddenly disappears from their home. But within weeks, whispers began spreading through crowded streets and busy marketplaces. Something was wrong. Something deadly had entered Europe. As the months passed, entire communities began to vanish. Homes stood empty. Churches overflowed with the sick. The sound of funeral bells became constant. Fear spread faster than any messenger could travel. People watched neighbors die without understanding why. Parents buried children. Children buried parents. And many believed they were witnessing the end of the world itself. What had begun as a mysterious sickness would soon become one of the greatest catastrophes in human history. A pandemic so devastating that it would kill tens of millions, reshape nations, and leave scars that would endure for centuries. This was the Black Death, the deadliest plague the world had ever seen. Let's take a moment to reflect. Faced with widespread disease and rising death tolls, how do you think medieval societies cared for the sick and handled the dead? Leave your answer in the comments below. If you'd like to see more historically focused content, please like, share, and subscribe. It makes a huge difference and helps the channel continue to grow. Before the plague arrived, Europe was experiencing a period of growth and change. Across the continent, cities expanded behind their stone walls. Trade routes connected kingdoms from the Mediterranean to the North Sea. Merchant caravans carried silk, spices, grain, and precious goods across vast distances. Markets buzzed with activity from sunrise until dusk. Blacksmiths hammered iron, bakers filled streets with the smell of fresh bread, and ships arrived daily carrying wealth from distant lands. To many, Europe seemed to be prospering. But beneath this appearance of progress lay a dangerous reality. Most medieval cities were overcrowded. Families lived packed together in narrow buildings. Waste and sewage often flowed through open streets. Clean drinking water was scarce, and sanitation was almost non-existent. Rats thrived in these conditions. Disease could spread rapidly among the population. Few understood how illness traveled, and medicine remained limited by superstition and misunderstanding. Unknowingly, Europe had created the perfect environment for disaster. And soon, that disaster would arrive. The origins of the Black Death can be traced thousands of miles away across the trade networks that linked Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. For centuries, merchants traveled these routes carrying valuable goods between civilizations. But they were not traveling alone. Hidden among cargo, food supplies, and ship holds were rats carrying infected fleas. The deadly bacterium they carried would become one of history's greatest killers. In 1347, ships began arriving at European ports carrying more than merchandise. Some sailors were already gravely ill. Others had died during the voyage. Witnesses described vessels drifting into harbors with crews barely able to stand. At first, authorities had little understanding of what they were facing. Ships unloaded cargo. Merchants continued trading. Travelers continued moving between towns and cities. And with every journey, the disease spread farther. Once the plague entered a community, it moved with terrifying speed. Within weeks, entire neighborhoods were infected. Within months, vast regions of Europe were overwhelmed. The Black Death had arrived, and there would be no easy escape. You survived COVID, but could you survive the fear of the Black Death? Would you approach anyone or trust no one? Comment below. For those infected, the disease often began suddenly. A fever appeared without warning. Headaches became unbearable. The body weakened rapidly. Then came the symptom that terrified medieval Europe more than any other. Painful swellings called buboes emerged beneath the skin, often appearing on the neck, armpits, or groin. Some grew as large as apples. Victims suffered intense pain. Dark bruises and blotches spread across the body as internal bleeding occurred beneath the skin. Many became delirious. Others struggled to breathe. Death could arrive in a matter of days, sometimes in only hours. The speed of the illness created panic everywhere it appeared. Families watched loved ones die without understanding the cause. Doctors were powerless. Prayers often seemed unanswered. Fear consumed entire communities. People abandoned sick relatives. Neighbors locked their doors. Rumors spread through cities already paralyzed by uncertainty. Many believed God was punishing humanity. Others thought the air itself had become poisoned. As death multiplied around them, countless people became convinced that the world was approaching its final days. As the plague spread across Europe, daily life began to unravel. Markets closed. Trade routes fell silent. Ships remained anchored in harbors. Merchants disappeared. The workers who harvested crops, baked bread, and transported goods were dying faster than they could be replaced. Food shortages soon followed. Entire villages vanished from maps. In some towns, houses stood abandoned with belongings left exactly where their owners had fallen ill. Fear transformed society. People became suspicious of one another. Strangers were avoided. Even family members hesitated to care for the sick. Local governments struggled to maintain order. Churches overflowed with the dying. Hospitals quickly became overwhelmed. In many regions, half the population perished. The systems that held medieval society together began to break apart. What had once been thriving communities became landscapes of silence and loss. Europe was no longer functioning as it once had. Its people were no longer planning for the future. They were simply trying to survive another day. With no understanding of bacteria or infection, medieval Europe searched desperately for explanations. Many believed the plague was divine punishment for humanity's sins. Religious processions filled city streets. People gathered in churches praying for salvation. Others blamed unusual planetary alignments, poisonous vapors, or curses. Fear encouraged superstition to flourish. Accusations spread rapidly. Minorities and outsiders were sometimes falsely blamed for the disaster, leading to persecution and violence. Meanwhile, physicians attempted to treat the disease using the limited knowledge available at the time. One of history's most recognizable figures emerged from this crisis: the plague doctor. Dressed in long, dark robes and wearing a distinctive beaked mask, these physicians became symbols of the pandemic. The beak was filled with fragrant herbs and flowers. Many believed pleasant smells could protect against disease carried through the air. But despite their efforts, treatments rarely worked. The plague continued spreading relentlessly. No prayer, remedy, or superstition could halt its advance. The Black Death marched across Europe, leaving devastation wherever it appeared. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share it with others who love history. And be sure to leave a comment. We read every one. Now, let's get back to the story. As the death toll rose, cities faced a grim new challenge. There were simply too many bodies. Traditional funerals became impossible. Cemeteries filled beyond capacity. Gravediggers worked from dawn until nightfall, struggling to keep pace with the endless stream of victims. Carts moved through streets collecting the dead. Their wheels rattled over cobblestones as bells echoed through the city. Families often had little opportunity to mourn. The sheer scale of death forced communities to abandon centuries-old burial traditions. Mass graves appeared outside city walls. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of bodies were placed together in enormous pits. Rain turned graveyards into fields of mud. The smell of decay lingered in the air. Church bells rang almost constantly. For many survivors, the sound became synonymous with death itself. Modern historians estimate that between 75 and 200 million people may have died worldwide. Entire generations disappeared. The Black Death became one of the deadliest disasters humanity has ever endured. Eventually, after years of destruction, the plague began to slow. The outbreaks did not disappear completely, but the worst wave gradually passed. Europe emerged from the catastrophe profoundly changed. Millions were gone. Fields remained abandoned. Villages stood empty. Yet amid the devastation, new opportunities began to appear. With so many workers lost, surviving laborers became more valuable. Landowners struggled to find people willing to work their farms. Wages increased in many regions. Traditional social structures began to weaken. The balance of power slowly shifted. Economic systems evolved. Communities rebuilt. Cities recovered. But the emotional scars remained. Nearly every family had experienced loss. Stories of the plague passed from generation to generation. The memory of mass graves, deserted streets, and endless funerals became woven into Europe's collective consciousness. The Black Death did more than kill millions. It transformed economies, societies, and governments. Its impact would shape the course of history for centuries to come. Death eventually faded from the headlines of history, but its shadow never truly disappeared. The pandemic revealed uncomfortable truths about human civilization. It showed how interconnected societies can spread both prosperity and disaster. It demonstrated how quickly fear can travel when uncertainty takes hold. And it exposed the limits of human knowledge in the face of an invisible threat. For those who lived through it, the plague was more than a disease. It was a defining event that changed how people viewed life, death, faith, and survival. Centuries later, scientists continue studying the Black Death to understand how pandemics emerge and spread. Its lessons remain relevant even in the modern world. Because despite advances in medicine and technology, humanity still faces the same fundamental challenge. How do we respond when confronted by forces beyond our control? The Black Death remains one of history's greatest warnings, a reminder of our vulnerability, a reminder of our resilience, and a reminder that even in humanity's darkest moments, survival is possible. The Black Death changed the course of human history. It transformed nations, reshaped societies, and left scars that endured for generations. Yet even today, its story remains a powerful reminder of how fragile civilization can be, and how resilient humanity must become in times of crisis. If you enjoyed this journey into history's darkest chapters, consider subscribing for more cinematic documentaries exploring the events, mysteries, and turning points that shaped our world. Leave a comment below and tell us which historical event you would like to see covered next. And if you found this story fascinating, share it with someone who loves history. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep exploring the past because history never truly disappears.